First of all, I am going to start out by saying that this may be my first and last video that I make under this new channel. At one time I did have another channel, XJW, Jane Doe. I had about 4,000 subscribers, and my daughter discovered it. She's a JW, and she discovered my channel, and so she was so devastated that I took it down. And then, shortly after that, I had a stroke, and I was out of commission for about 3 months. It was a stroke that affects your throat, and she actually had to come and take care of me for almost a whole month because it was kind of a bad stroke, and I lost my voice. Now my voice is finally back. It's been about 4 months, and my voice is finally back. And I told her, you know, when I did my channel, I had about 2,000 subscribers, no, 4,000 I think. Anyway, it was my life, you know. I loved doing Bible research, and it was my life. And I told her, you know, I can't imagine how I could get this fellowship because I just used Watchtower literature and the Bible, you know. But anyway, she was so devastated that I took it down. So then I had a stroke, and that was about 4 months ago. So she took care of me for almost a whole month. She lives about 25 miles away, but she came every day and took care of me. So I got my voice back now, so I can do videos. So this may be my first and last video. Now, my husband was an elder from the age of about 30 to 40, so I know what it's like to be the wife of an elder too. And, you know, as an elder, he didn't have time with the kids at all. Yeah, and he was so busy. He had a full-time job working in a factory plus being an elder, so our kids were growing up and he was missing out on it, so he quit being an elder. And so I know what it's like being an elder's wife too. Anyway, last Saturday night, I always watch Six Screens, you know, Rick Farron's show, Six Screens of the Watchtower. And they were talking about a leaked video that's come up on YouTube. This coordinator of the elders supposedly was watching pornography. And so the point of the video, this leaked video, is that one elder was angry with the other elders because the coordinator of the elder body confessed that his wife was going through menopause, and so then he wasn't intimate with his wife anymore, and so he started looking at pornography. Now, you know, he's in his at least 50s, because when a woman goes through menopause, she's usually in her 50s. So this is an older man, confesses that he's been looking at pornography. Now, I don't know why in the world he would do that, why he would go to the other elders and confess that, but he supposedly did. Now, my suspicion is that a lot of women have been looking at their husbands' either phones or their computers and discovered that they were looking at pornography. And this has become quite a problem with the Watchtower Society. It's like, okay, how do we deal with this? Even elders are looking at pornography. So, anyway, the leaked video was chastising this one elder because he decided that he was not going to follow up to see if this elder had stopped looking at pornography. So this one elder was angry because this younger elder decided that they should have followed up with the coordinator to see if he had stopped looking at pornography, and they did not do that. So he was angry at the rest of the elders. So the one that got chastised was the one that was angry at the younger elder because he was angry because they were not following up to see if this brother had quit looking at pornography. So it leaves it up in the air whether they're going to delete him as the coordinator of the elders or not. Now, as far as I know, the only reason you can be disfellowshipped for looking at pornography, if it's entrenched, if it's abhorrent, if it's between people who are not heterosexual. If it's between more than a man and a woman, if it's like 3 or 4, and child rape too, I think if they look at child abuse, I think they can be disfellowshipped for that. But as far as just looking at pornography between a man and a woman, or between a young person, I think they have to be at least 18. I don't think they can disfellowship them for doing that. It has to be abhorrent. It has to be where they're. Just a minute. I got to plug in my computer. I need my phone again. Anyway, it has to be, and if they're showing it to somebody else. Okay, they can't show it to somebody else. But if they do it in the privacy of their own home, it all depends. But anyway, the point of that video was whether he should keep his position, whether this elder should keep his position or not. So anyway, I called into, Rick Farron's show, and I said, as far as I can remember, just looking at pornography is not a sin. Well, I went and I brought up the 2022 Shepherd the Flock Elder's book, and it says that looking at pornography is a sin. That's what it does say there. And if you're looking at child porn, I think, or child abuse, I'm pretty sure they can be disfellowshipped for that too. If it just happens once or twice, it's not bad. But if they keep doing it, then they can be disfellowshipped. Okay, so is it logical that this man, the coordinator of the elders, is going to go to the other elders and tell them, I'm looking at pornography? I don't believe that. I believe that he was turned in by his wife. That's what I think. I think she found it out. And because it just doesn't make sense to me that somebody's going to just go and confess to the other elders that they're looking at pornography. I don't believe that. I think he was turned in. I think a lot of women are finding this out. And so then how do they deal with this? Watchtower came out with an article in 2023, and it was in a study article, when a marriage mate views pornography. Now, I on the right here, I have an article from the Insight book. Before I get into this, I have an article in the Insight book under the topic of the book of Judges. Now, why did I stop going to the meetings in 2015? Because I was a witness from the age of 18 to 68. Now I'm 78. But I stopped going to the meetings about 2015 because I started actually reading the Bible on my own. And I discovered that it's just not in logical order. It's just, there's so many things about the Bible. If you study the Bible with a notebook, you got to use a notebook, because if you don't do that, you're going to forget what you read in chapter to chapter. But I used a notebook, and like I took Exodus apart scripture by scripture with a notebook, and I had over 100 pages of notes that just didn't make sense to me. This is an easy one. If you love going to the meetings, if you love being a witness, that's one thing. If you don't love it, if you find it depressing, I was depressed from the time that I became a witness until I stopped being a witness. And what helped me with my depression, because I was Armageddon was over my head the whole time. It was like a dark cloud over my head. I couldn't do enough. I never felt like I could ever do enough, and I was being a witness was depressing for me, constantly depressing. That depression is left, and what helped me to get over the depression was to see that the Bible is not inspired. And an easy one for you, if you don't like being a witness, an easy one for you, if you're looking at this video, is to say, why does Phineas show up at the end of Judges? Phineas is Aaron's grandson. He's the one that killed. He's the one that killed Cosby in the book of Numbers, in chapter 25 of Numbers. How in the world does he end up 400 years later at the end of Judges? So that's an easy one. You say to yourself, how does Phineas end up at the end of Judges 400 years later? And if you do some research in the Watchtower Society's publications, go to the book of Judges. Go to the topic of Judges, the book of Judges, and look up arrangement. And you're going to see that the book of Judges, plus, like I said, if you study through Exodus, you're going to find out the same thing. It's just not in logical order. So how could it be inspired? So how do they explain that? Before I get into this topic of marriage mate views pornography, when a marriage mate, because in my opinion, when I read this, I see that the Watchtower Society is turning to women to act as elders. I see this. It's in this article, and I think most people would have not read it or not paid attention to it, but it's there. But before I do that, let's go to this topic of the Bible. Is it inspired? Arrangement. This is in the Insight book under the book of Judges. Judges book of arrangement. Judges is linked with the preceding Bible book by its opening words, and after the death of Joshua. However, some of the happenings narrated therein evidently occurred before Joshua died. For example, Judges 2-6 reads, "When Joshua sent the people away, then the sons of Israel went their way, each to his inheritance, to take possession of the land." So it appears that Judges 1-3-6 serves as an introduction. The writer having drawn on the events taking place before and after Joshua's death in order to provide the historical background for the account that follows. The section running from chapter 3, verse 7 to the end of chapter 16 basically is in chronological order and relates the activities of 12 judges, not including Deborah, starting with Othniel and concluding with Samson. The last part of the book could be termed an appendix and fits a period much earlier than Samson's judgeship. See, the last part could be an appendix. So they're saying it doesn't make sense. What's an appendix, you know? The capture of Laish by the Danites could reasonably have taken place before Joshua's death. Compare Joshua 19:47, Judges 18:27 through 28. The mass sex crime of the men of Gibeah and subsequent events resulting in the near extermination of the tribes of Benjamin probably occurred not many years after Joshua's death. Okay, this would allow sufficient time for the Benjaminites to have increased from about 600 men, Judges 20:47, to nearly 60,000 warriors by the time of David's reign, 1 Chronicles. Okay, so when you're reading Judges and you get to this account now, Jehovah's Witnesses are very familiar with the account of this Levite who cut up his concubine into 12 pieces and sent her body parts to all the tribes of Israel. Everybody knows that story very well. That's at the end of Judges. So then, because the Benjaminites did not turn over these men that raped his concubine, Jehovah decides he wants the tribe of Benjamin exterminated. Even the men of Jabesh Gilead, he wants them exterminated too. So all 11 tribes of Israel decided they're going to destroy or kill all of the Benjamites, and there's only 600 of them left. Well, Phineas is there. Phineas is there at the end of Judges. How in the world does Phineas end up at the end of Judges 400 years after Moses? It just absolutely doesn't make any sense. So what do they say? They say the last couple of chapters of Judges is an appendix. It could be an appendix. So in other words, they're saying it doesn't make sense. Well, it could have been this and it could have been that. Well, when you're reading the Bible, You know, it's, you say to yourself, how in the world is Phineas at the end of Judges 400 years later? It doesn't make sense. So they're trying to explain this away by saying, well, it could have happened here and it could have happened there. But what they're admitting to is it's not in chronological order. That's just one thing. It's so easy to say to somebody, you know, if you don't like going to the meetings and you stop going, like I stopped going in 2015 because I came to the conclusion that the Bible isn't inspired. Because when you take a notebook and you study through it, it's like you come up with so many things in there that just don't make sense. And so it's like, how could I keep going to the meetings and preaching it if I didn't think it was inspired? So I'm not disfellowshipped. I can't, you know, how can they disfellowship me? If I say, well, I studied the Bible and Phineas ends up at the end of Judges, it's 400 years later? I can't believe this is inspired. How can they disfellowship me for that? So they've never called me before a committee, and I don't think they can disfellowship me for that. But that's the reason why I stopped going, because I came to the conclusion the Bible is not inspired. Okay, that's how I stopped going, from studying the Bible. Okay, so let's get back to the topic of pornography. I'm watching Rick Farron's show, Six Screens, and they're talking about this leaked video about this elder who decided that he goes to the brothers and he tells them he's viewing pornography, and they didn't follow up on it, and there's a big kerfuffle over it because his one brother was mad because they didn't follow up. So the circuit overseers called in, and he says yes, they should have followed up. It leaves it up in the air, because I did look at the video finally, and they leave it up in the air whether he's going to be deleted. He probably is going to be deleted as the coordinator of the elders. That doesn't mean he's going to get disfellowship, though, because just looking at it, if it's not abhorrent, I don't believe they're going to disfellowship somebody for looking at pornography. There's conditions of whether they get disfellowship for it or not if they're viewing pornography. So that was Rick Farron's show, Six Screens, and I called in, started doing research, and I came across this article. This is 2013 or 2023, which is really just a year ago. They came up with this article, and I'm thinking this does not help a person who finds out that their mate is looking at pornography. I see that this helps nothing. This does nothing to help this person. To, you know, how do they deal with this? In fact, they say the elders are going to tell this woman to go to another person, another woman in the congregation, and ask the other woman in the congregation to help them deal with this. How in the world can the Watchtower Society tell this woman to go to another woman in the congregation and confess and say that my husband is looking at pornography? How can they do that? This is, to me, resorting to other women in the congregation acting as elders. I found this astounding that they're giving women permission to go around in the congregation and tell other women that their husband is looking at pornography. This is astounding to me. The only thing I can think of is that they're running so low on elders, that the Watchtower is running so low on elders that they're resorting to other women being elders. This makes absolutely zero sense to me, absolutely zero. But you go to the online library and you type in the article, when a marriage mate views pornography. Let's read this. When a marriage mate views pornography, I felt as if my husband had repeatedly committed adultery. I felt humiliated, unattractive, and worthless. I could not talk to anyone about it. I suffered in silence. I felt as if Jehovah didn't care about me. The above expressions show how much a wife suffers when her husband views pornography. And if he has been doing so in secret, perhaps for months or years, she may feel that she cannot trust him anymore. As one wife said, I wondered, who is this man beside me? Are there other things he is hiding from me? This article has been prepared for a wife whose husband has succumbed to pornography. It will discuss Bible principles that provide comfort, assure her of Jehovah's support, and help her to recover emotionally and spiritually. What can an innocent mate do? Although you cannot control everything your husband does, you can take steps to lessen your anguish and to experience greater peace of mind. Consider the following. Avoid self-blame. A wife might feel that her husband's use of pornography is somehow her fault. Alice, I felt that she must be deficient as a woman. No, Alice felt that she must be deficient as a woman. She wondered, why does my husband prefer to look at other women instead of me? Okay, let's see. Okay, why does my husband prefer to look at other women instead of me? Some wives blame themselves for their reaction, thinking that they are making the situation worse. Danielle says, I saw myself as a bitter woman who was destroying our marriage by my anger. If you feel similarly, okay, I see this article as absolutely no help to women whatsoever. What's going on? If you feel similarly, know that Jehovah does not hold you responsible for your husband's actions. Each one is tried and being drawn out by or enticed by his own desire. Instead of blaming you, Jehovah values your loyalty to him. It also may be helpful to understand that a husband's use of pornography does not mean that his wife is deficient as a woman. Experts on the subject point out that pornography creates insatiable cravings for fantasy that no woman can satisfy. Avoid excessive worry. Catherine said that obsessing over her husband's use of pornography, obsessing over her husband's use of pornography consumed her entire life. Catherine said that obsessing over her husband, so she's obsessing over it. Her husband's use of pornography consumed her life. Frances said, so in other words, she should not be obsessing over it, the fact that her husband looks at pornography. Frances said, I get anxious whenever I lose track of where my husband is. I am nervous wreck today. Other wives have revealed how embarrassed they feel in the presence of fellow Christians who might know of their husband's problem. Okay, so later on they say that she can go and talk to other women about her husband's pornography use. So it says she feels embarrassed. Other wives have revealed how embarrassed they feel in the presence of fellow Christians who might know of their husband's problem. Still others have admitted how isolated they feel because they think that nobody understands their situation. These feelings are natural, yet natural. In other words, it's natural to feel embarrassed because other people are going to find out your husband's looking at pornography. Where are they condemning this? Where? Yet dwelling on them will only increase your apprehension. Instead, try to focus on your relationship with Jehovah. Doing so will help you to build inner strength. You might find it helpful to read about and meditate on Bible accounts of troubled women who found comfort by turning to Jehovah in prayer. He did not always reverse their circumstances, but he gave them peace. Hannah, for example, had been extremely bitter over her situation. But after she prayed for a long time before Jehovah, she experienced peace, even though she did not yet know how her situation would turn out. Seek support from the congregation elders. They can be a shelter from the wind. Seek help. Okay, let's look at that again. Okay, help. Might you be able to find help with your husband overcome his... Okay, where is it? Okay, seek support from the congregation elders. They can be a shelter from the wind, a refuge from the rainstorm. They may be able to recommend a sister in whom you can confide and find comfort. Let's look at that again. You might find it helpful to read about and meditate about accounts of troubled women who find comfort by turning to Jehovah in prayer. He did not always reverse their circumstances, but he gave them peace. Hannah, for example, had been extremely bitter over her situation, but after she prayed for a long time before Jehovah, she experienced peace, even though she did not yet know how it would turn out. Seek support from the congregation elders. They can be a shelter from the wind, a refuge from the rainstorm. They may even be able to recommend a sister in whom you can confide and find comfort. See, this is what I don't get. It's like, how many witnesses went over this and read this and saw this? They may even recommend a sister in whom you can confide and find comfort. So they're telling you to go to another woman in the congregation to tell them about your problem with that your husband is looking at pornography. Is that not turning these women into elders? I mean, how many witnesses read this article? It went right over their head. To me, they're turning women into elders here. I mean, how can they do this? How can they do this and say that you can go to this other women in the congregation and find comfort because your husband is looking at pornography? Are they condemning it or not? I see not. They are not condemning their husband looking at pornography at all. They're telling these women, oh, well, go. Maybe you can find help. Go to the elders. Maybe they can help you. How can you help him? Can you help him? Might you be able to help your husband overcome his habit of viewing pornography? Perhaps. The Bible points out that in solving a problem or in conquering a formidable enemy, two are better than one. Studies show that results are often good when a couple work together to overcome an addiction problem to pornography to restore trust in their marriage. Of course, much will depend on whether your mate is earnest and determined to overcome his inclination to view pornography. Has he supplicated Jehovah for strength and sought help from the elders? Has he developed strategies that keep him away from temptation? For example, restricting his use, now he has to do this, restricting his use of electronic devices and avoiding high-risk situations. Is he willing to accept your help and be able to completely be honest with you? If so, you may be able to help him. How? Consider an example. Felicia married Ethan, who had become addicted to pornography in his early childhood. Felicia makes it easy for him to talk to her about his recurring urge to return to pornography. Ethan explains, I talk honestly and openly with my wife. She lovingly helps me put up boundaries and checks on me regularly. And she helps me limit access to the internet. Naturally, Felicia feels hurt by Ethan's attraction to pornography, but she says, my feelings of anger and pain do not help him remain free from his vice. After we analyze his issues, he is ready to work with me through my own pain. Such discussions can not only help a husband to remain free from pornography, but also help his wife to trust him again. After all, when a husband is willing to be open about his tendencies, daily activities, and whereabouts, all secrecy is removed. Do you believe that this can help your husband in a similar way? If so, why not read and discuss this article together? His goals will be to quit pornography and to give you a basis to trust him. Rather than resent your concern, he should endeavor to understand how the problem affects you. Your goals are to restore his efforts and to allow him the opportunity to restore your trust. You will both need to learn what causes people to succumb to pornography and how the problem can be overcome. If you feel that your conversation will get heated, consider asking an elder with whom you are both comfortable to sit in and guide your discussions for a time. Be aware that even after a marriage mate has overcome an addiction to pornography, it may take considerable time to restore trust. Do not give up. Look for small improvements in your relationship. Expect that with time and patience, your marriage will eventually become strong again. I see this. No, let's see. How can the elders help? If the wife is willing, arrange to speak with both mates regularly. Give her the opportunity to express herself openly. Understand the enslaving nature of pornography and be mindful of what it takes to stay free from it. Even if the problem seems to have passed, be aware that ongoing help will likely be needed. Be careful not to make excuses for the husband's conduct to imply that the wife is somehow to blame. Encourage the wife to see herself as Jehovah sees her and to keep feeding her spiritually through personal study and prayer. Assure the wife that she is loved, respected, and valued by Jehovah, the body of elders, and the congregation. What if he persists? If the husband has a relapse, does that mean that he is unrepentant or that the situation is hopeless? Not necessarily, especially if addiction is involved. He could be facing lifelong challenge. A relapse could occur even after years of abstinence. To avoid future setbacks, he will need to put up a stronger level of resistance, perhaps keeping his strategies in place even after the problem seems to be conquered. He will need to cultivate new dominant mental attitude and learn to hate what is bad, pornography as well as related unclean practices such as masturbation. Is he willing to make these efforts? If so, his situation may not be hopeless after all. What though if the mate simply shows no interest in fighting his problem? Understandably, you might experience recurring feelings of disappointment, anger, betrayal. Seek peace of mind by leaving the matter in Jehovah's hands. Continue to draw close to Jehovah through prayer and meditation. If you do, be assured that he is drawing closer to you. As stated in Isaiah 57:15, he resides with those who feel crushed and lowly, reviving their spirit. Endeavor to be the best Christian you can be. Seek support from the elders and remain hopeful that at some future time your husband may make a heartfelt change. Okay, I see nothing in here that if he persists, he's going to be disfellowshipped. I see this as no comfort whatsoever to Jehovah's Witness women. And I see this that they're turning to other women for help, making the other women in the congregation elders.